When the Terminator says you're more dangerous than the lies that broke his own family, you don't just listen, you wake up. Trump isn't just a failed president. Arnold says he's a threat to the soul of America, and he's seen this nightmare before.
President Trump sought to overturn the results of an election, and of a fair election. He sought a coup by misleading people with lies. My father and our neighbors were misled also with lies, and I know where such lies lead. President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever. The good thing is that he soon will be as irrelevant as an old tweet. But what are we to make of those elected officials who have enabled his lies and his treachery? I will remind them of what Teddy Roosevelt said. Patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president.
This isn't action movie fiction. This is real fear. From a man who grew up surrounded by the wreckage of lies, war, and broken men. Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't talking politics. He's talking about survival. He watched his own father get poisoned by propaganda. And now he sees it happening again, here in America. When Trump lost, he didn't leave with dignity. He clung to power like a dictator. He lied, misled, and almost broke democracy itself. And those around him, cowards in suits, backing him like loyal soldiers. Not patriots, traitors in plain sight. Arnold says it clearly. Trump is the worst president in American history. And if we ignore that warning, if we let the lies slide one more time, we won't just lose an election, we'll lose the country.
While you were governor, what is something you said or did that you knew was a lie?
I don't know if I can say that. There's a time when the governor signs bills or vetoes them. So when you veto a bill from the legislators, then you write a veto message. Or there was one legislature that I didn't like at all. And so I vetoed his bill, but I wanted to make sure that he really gets the message. So I wrote each line on the veto message, each line had to start with a certain letter that when you go down the line, it says you. And at the press conference the next day, when they discovered that, the press, they said to me, says, did you know that they said you?
Yeah.
And I said, no, wait a minute. Where does it say that?
This isn't just a politician. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when he has something to say, he doesn't just say it. He codes it in legislation. He once vetoed a bill, not because it was flawed, but because the man behind it was. And instead of smiling fake on camera like every other two-faced politician, he buried a message so savage the press couldn't believe it. Each line of the official government document spelled out F-U, and when the reporters called him out, he played it cool. Wait, where does it say that? That's not politics. That's precision warfare. A man who went from Terminator to governor to surgical savage with a pen. This isn't the kind of leader who bows to bullies like Trump. This is the kind of man who calls them out and carves their legacy into failure. And this was just a joke compared to what he says next. Stick around. The next shot Arnold takes, he doesn't miss.
President Trump, I just saw your press conference with President Putin, and it was embarrassing. I mean, you stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy. I mean, I was asking myself, when are you going to ask him for an autograph or for a selfie or something like that? I mean, you literally sold out at this press conference our intelligence community, our justice system, and worst of all, our country. You're the president of the United States. You shouldn't do that. I mean, what's the matter with you? I mean, whatever happened to the strong words or to the strength of Ronald Reagan when he stood there at the Berlin Wall and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. What happened to all that?
This wasn't a speech, it was a verbal body slam. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, just wrecked Donald Trump on camera. After Trump's press conference with Putin, Arnold let loose. You stood there like a wet noodle, like a fanboy. Bro, that's not shade, that's a direct hit. Arnold asked, "You want a selfie with Putin?" I swear, even the Secret Service probably flinched. And it gets worse. He says Trump sold out America. Intelligence community, gone. Justice system, thrown under the bus. The country, embarrassed. Then Arnold drops the final nuke. What happened to Reagan's strength? Bro. Reagan faced the Soviets. Trump just smiled at him. Arnold didn't just criticize him, he shredded him. On camera, no teleprompter, no mercy. And Trump's response? Silence. Not even a tweet. But this was just round one. Because what Trump's team did next will blow your mind.
Mr. Trump has been indicted on federal charges, but most of the top Republican officials are siding with him against the special prosecutor. How do you explain that?
If the charges are correct, then he's going to be in deep trouble. But at the same time, I have to say that, we're always innocent until proven guilty. So we'll find out what the courts say in the future. But if the charges are right, I think that he's going to be in deep trouble.
And how worried are you about the fact that he could be reelected president?
I'm not worried about it because I don't think it's going to happen. But that's just my thinking.
Trump was indicted on federal charges, and yet most top Republicans are still standing behind him. So the host asked Arnold, "How do you explain this?" Arnold didn't flinch. He said, "If the charges are true, he's in deep trouble. Not some trouble, not maybe. Deep trouble. But he's no fool," he added, "innocent until proven guilty." He played it fair, but the message was crystal clear. If the court says guilty, Trump's done. Then came the real gut punch. What if Trump gets reelected? That's the moment the room held its breath. Arnold looked up and said, "I was worried, but I don't think it's going to happen." No jokes, no roasting, just raw honesty. This wasn't the Terminator speaking. This was a former governor, talking about a former president, possibly headed to prison, and still somehow heading for a comeback. And that's the twist America isn't ready for. A courtroom showdown and a presidential election, both racing toward collision. But what Trump does next might flip the story upside down.
Or to me, it's all about hard work. That's why I say in my book, work your ass off. And because there's no shortcut. And you have to kind of put the work in. And, I talked earlier about the bicep. The more you kind of torture the bicep, the more resistance you give it and the more pain there is, the more it grows. The same is with us, with the human mind. The human mind can only really grow through resistance. You can only strengthen your character and become a really strong person inside if you have resistance, if you fail, if you get up again, and if you work hard, and if you work your ass off, and if you struggle. The more you struggle, the further you're going to go.
They asked Arnold how he deals with failure, and what came out wasn't a cliche, it was a gut punch. He said, "There's no secret, no cheat code. You work your ass off. No filters, no fluff, just raw truth." He broke it down like a machine. "The bicep only grows when you torture it," he said. "The more it hurts, the bigger it gets." But then, he flipped it. "It's not just muscle," he said. "It's the mind. It's your soul." According to Arnold, the only way to grow as a human is to fail, to fall, to get punched in the gut, and stand back up swinging. He didn't glorify winning. He glorified struggle. "The more you suffer," he said, "the further you go." This wasn't a motivational poster. This was a man who lived it. In the gym, in politics, in life. And whether you're building a body or running a country, that mindset is the difference between a comeback and a collapse.
Why do you think you'd be a good president, or would have been?
Yeah, I think that I have the talent to be a good president. And I also think that I have the talent to go out and to sell that idea to the American people. Those two candidates, Trump and Biden, suck all the energy, all the oxygen out of the room when they give a press speech or do anything. So no one else has the chance of getting the exposure. And there's really no one with a big name, so to speak. So that's why it would be easier for me, that from one minute to the next, the dynamic would change if I would jump into a race like that.
When they asked Arnold if he thought he'd be a good president, he didn't hesitate. "Yeah," he said, "I've got the talent." But then, he took the gloves off. Trump and Biden? He called them out without even raising his voice. He said they suck all the oxygen out of the room, that their presence is so loud, no one else even gets a chance. No fresh faces, no big names, just two giants blocking the stage. But then came the power move. Arnold looked straight into the camera and said, "That dynamic would change the moment I step in." He didn't say maybe. He didn't say if. He said the energy of the entire race would flip instantly. This wasn't ego. This was undeniable star power. Because in a room full of politicians, Arnold still sounds like the only one built for the main event.
We don't have to go under completely. We don't have to wait for that moment. Let's change and let's go and be more open and go back to this kind of like a big tent idea of Ronald Reagan. And I think this is why we have helped it to some extent here in California with getting rid of gerrymandering and to do redistricting reform and to have open primaries.
Independents are about to overtake Republicans in California. What can California do differently?
I think independents are going to take over the Republicans, they're going to take over the Democrats.
Arnold wasn't just talking politics. He was calling for a reset. He said, "We don't have to wait for things to collapse. We can change the game now. Go back to the big tent vision, the one Ronald Reagan stood for: open minds, open primaries, real reform." And in California, he's already seen it work, with redistricting reform and independent voices finally breaking through. Then came the twist. The host said, "Independents are about to overtake Republicans." And Arnold didn't blink. "They're going to take over the Democrats too." Boom, that wasn't a prediction. That was a political earthquake. He's not just watching history, he's warning the establishment. If you don't evolve, the people will do it without you.
What would they say?
Ruin your cities.
What's that?
Ruin your cities.
Ruin your cities.
That's what the Democrats would say. We're about ruining the cities. We want to f up every city in America. That's what it seems to be the theme right now.
Why is that?
I have no idea.
Arnold leaned in and mocked the madness. Ruin your cities. That's the new slogan, right? He was dripping with sarcasm. Apparently, Democrats want to screw up every city in America. That's the theme now? Then he paused and dropped the truth. Why is that? I have no idea. That wasn't just frustration. It was a former governor calling out how broken the conversations become. The shouting's louder. The logic? Long gone, and if that's the narrative we're stuck in, everybody loses.
I have a great idea. Why don't we switch jobs? You take over TV because you're such an expert in ratings, and I take over your job. And then people can finally sleep comfortably again.
And they hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place. And we know how that turned out. The ratings went right down the tubes. It's been a total disaster.
So being from Europe, I've seen firsthand how things can spin out of control. I know there is a fear in this country and all over the world that something like this could happen, right?
Arnold didn't just clap back, he torched the room. "I've got a great idea," he said. "Let's switch jobs. You take over TV since you're such an expert in ratings, and I'll take over the presidency. Then maybe people can finally sleep at night." Boom. That wasn't just a joke. That was a direct hit. Trump, of course, fired back. They brought in a big star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to replace me on TV. Total disaster. Ratings in the toilet. Classic Trump. Ratings first, reality second. But then, Arnold flipped the tone. He got serious. "I'm from Europe," he said. "I've seen what happens when things spiral out of control." And just like that, the roast became a warning. He wasn't talking about shows anymore. He was talking about history, about fear, about the real threat creeping in when egos grow too big and democracies fall asleep. Because if America doesn't wake up, it won't be just the ratings that crash, it'll be the whole system.
I would make a great president. Everything that I've accomplished was because of America. So the only thing that I can't do, which is run for president, I'm not going to complain about that. We have had the most unbelievable reaction to the book. It's one of those things, that I did not dream of. All I wished was just to be the most muscular man in the world, to get into movies, and to make millions of dollars. After that, a lot of new dreams came about. People read about my successes. They read about the movies that made hundreds of millions of dollars, and they read that I won the governorship and ran the 5th largest economy in the world, how they become the greatest bodybuilder of all time. That's all true, but on the way to get there, There were tremendous defeats and there were tremendous losses. Losers stay down, but winners always get up. Thank you. Ow, 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 ow. Wow.
Arnold didn't just talk about his dreams, he talked about his journey. He said, "I'd make a great president. Everything I've accomplished, it's because of America." But then he paused. "The one thing I can't do, run for president, but I'm not complaining." He kept going. "I never dreamed of running the 5th largest economy in the world or being the most muscular man on earth. All I wanted was to get into movies, make millions, and be the best bodybuilder ever. But those dreams, they grew. And then he hit us with the truth. I faced massive defeats. I lost so much along the way." He didn't sugarcoat it. Losers stay down, but winners always get back up. That was Arnold in a nutshell. The victories, big. The losses, bigger. But the real lesson, it's not about how you fall, it's about how you rise. And rise he did.